Hello and welcome to First for FilmFellas. We're going to actually talk about a film that's just come out of the cinema, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I'm Julian from FilmFellas. Also from FilmFellas, joining me from Nottingham is Rob. Say hello,
Hi,
Rob.
how you doing? Hello, are you well?
Very well, thank you. So, Rob, people have met me before on the channel and know about my passion for film. So, well, this is your first time on the channel, even though you've been behind the scenes. Talk to me about your love of films.
Well, as you know, we've known each other since we were kids, and I'm pretty sure we've had a 30-year debate with all our other friends as to whether or not the bus would ever explode. So that's been going on. And I love movies as much as anything else. I very passionate about them, love them, and have a knowledge of 1,000 movies I can call upon. So I'm looking forward to chatting to you about the new Indiana Jones movie. And I'm looking forward to reliving some of the best parts of the first three and even the fourth one a little bit, which gets a lot of grief, but maybe doesn't deserve as much grief as it gets.
And so, on the subject of Indiana Jones, before we move on to Dial of Destiny, and you and I have had some text banter this morning, and we have very opposing views on it already. Talk to me about your love of Indiana Jones. Growing up, what it meant to you, and why you love the character.
Right. Well, when I was 6, my dad took me to see Temple of Doom. Now, arguably, that's not suitable for a 6-year-old, but my dad took me anyway. And we came out of the cinema in Bradford, and I wanted to swing on a rope, and I wanted to ride in a underground train, and I wanted to climb a bridge and do all these things. And we went to a little cafe in Idle, which is now a carpet shop, and over apple pie and custard, he explained to me that it's a prequel. They explained to me that a prequel, although we watched it second, it's actually the first one before Raiders of the Lost Ark. And this was a childhood moment. Me and my dad, we bonded. We became Indiana Jones and Short Round. We were really there. And I've got a 6-year-old. So with the idea of a new Indiana Jones movie coming out, I wanted to do that. I would take my little boy to see this movie. He's going to get to swing on a rope. He's going to go to climb a rope ladder. He's going to wrestle alligators. He's going to have a fear of snakes, and he's going to have all these things that we all want. And I've looked on and I've prepared it as well. I've been on Amazon. I've got some behind the scenes books. I've got some treasure maps to go through. I've got loads and loads and loads of stuff to do. And and I've followed because again, it was supposed to be released. I've got an 8-year-old as well, and this was supposed to be released a couple of years ago. So I was originally going to do this with my 8-year-old when he was 6. So you can imagine how excited I was. So yesterday, first day. As soon as work would allow, I was in the cinema, ticket in hand. I even had a shave and a haircut to get myself all preened to get the work dust out of my hair and crack on. So you can imagine, super excited for this.
Okay, so let's put our audience out of the misery. You've seen it. I saw it last night as well. Where do you stand? Because I absolutely loved it.
I'm going to be heartbroken because my 6-year-old isn't going to want to be Indiana Jones. He's not going to come out of that cinema and say, Daddy, can I swing on a whip? Can I climb a rope ladder? Can I wrestle an alligator? Can I move away from a giant boulder? He's not going to do any of that because Indiana Jones doesn't do any of that.
Well, I see. This is why I'm going to interrupt you because we've got a very different Indiana Jones in this. He's still Indiana Jones, but he's older. And the movie certainly reflects his age, but it's an older, wiser, an emotionally damaged Indiana Jones as well, to something that we'll come on to. But, for me, to counteract that, I think you've got Temple of Doom and Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade for that. This is an Indiana Jones who's 30, 40 years older than those movies.
No, absolutely.
And so let's break the movie down.
Okay.
Let's take each bit by bit, because I've got to be honest with you, I went through this movie. I was grinning from ear to ear all the way through it. I absolutely loved it. And the ending really got me in the feels. Really, I thought the ending was utterly fantastic.
Okay,
and,
well,
and I think let's debate it. So let's start. Germany, 1944. the opening, the de-aged 20-minute opening. Now, this was the start of the movie that I was really excited about. And actually, if I was to say analyze the whole movie, I would say it's the bit of the movie that I enjoyed the least.
Oh, no. Right. Okay. So the de-aging is excellent. There's a couple of moments when you go, oh, that looks a little bit, but putting that aside, it's first rate, isn't it? And the opening scene, firstly, the opening scene broke my heart. Where's the mountain that dissolved into the mountain? Where's the Paramount logo? All the other movies have got it, but this might be a case of I'm a new director. We're not doing the mountains, and we're certainly not doing any CGI gophers, which I think that's fair enough. So he's opening on a lock, and then we introduce to Indy, and he's got a bag on his head. Now, absolutely brilliant is this, because the one thing about Indiana Jones that's different to James Bond, is different to Ethan Hunt, is he makes mistakes. He gets captured. Whatever his plan was, he certainly wants to get captured. Bag on his head, take it off. It's a young Indy, amazing. And we're back to Indy at his prime. He's flying off the seat of his pants. He hasn't got a plan. He's escaping. He's running on a train. He's got a noose around his neck. But he's got the fight in him, because even though he's got a noose around his neck, he's talking and he's getting his hands. He's uncuffing him. Well, I think he's burning through his ropes or cutting through his ropes. He's doing an amazing job. He is the Indy that we want. He's back, and then he goes through the train. Now, again,
let me just stop you there for a bit, because the first bit that I did enjoy about that scene was the rope scene. The whole, and I think this is where my little grumble would be, because I actually think in Spielberg's hands, that scene with the rope and him balancing precariously, trying not to get strangled, and trying to get out of the noose, because it had a real kind of comic feel about it. It very much felt akin to almost the fireplace scene in Last Crusade in its kind of playfulness of it. And I actually felt that this is where the de-age thing let the movie down, because I think it was obviously done with a stunt double, and they'd done facial replacement, however they'd done it. And I felt that it basically didn't go wide enough in certain places, and didn't play around with it as much as it could have done, and been as fun as it could have been. But as you say, it then moves very swiftly onto the train scene, which is the real kind of guts of this scene. And it's where we get some pretty good Indy moments.
Yeah, with classic Indy, he uses his whip, he uses his ingenuity. He doesn't storm in. There's a room full of baddies. He doesn't storm in there all guns blazing. He tries to get through it, and then they do the cliche of all action movies when I'm not in my uniform to fight, so I'll take off my baddie outfit, I'll put on the hat, I'll put on the leather jacket, because you've got time. When you're being pursued by a load of Nazis, the one thing you need is a costume change. But it plays on that, because he transitions into a different carriage, putting on a jacket. He's holding his hat, and he uses his hat to distract the baddie, and he's a one-punch knockout. It's classic Indy. You can't go wrong with this. Loved it, loved every part of it. And then they're on the roof of the train, and again, this is it's well directed. They're using the lighting to obscure the de-aging. They're using the steam of the train. We know it's not really Harrison Ford 30 years ago. So I think it's Christopher McQuarrie who says the art of directing Tom Cruise is to show that it's Tom Cruise doing the stunts, whereas the art of directing everybody else is to try to mask the face of everyone. Yeah. And I thought, they're doing that well. Yeah, we're using the steam, we're using the darkness. All of this is really good. And again, he defeats the baddie by outwitting the baddie. You think he's given the actual dial of destiny to the baddie, and you think, Indy wouldn't do that. Come on, Indy, you're smarter than that. And then the reveal, of course, he never did. All of this is classic Indy.
And in true Indy style, there's almost, he escapes by pure accident and, by luck and by making mistakes. The whole bit with the gun at the front of the train, essentially dispatching the baddies for him. That opening sequence has all the markings of classic Indy. My only gripe with it is it should have been done. It's a scene that should have been done 40 years ago.
Well, it could have been.
I felt it suffered from the fact that it was a de-aged Indy, but they did the best. Like, there's a bit in the car where he's got the helmet on and he's disguised as a German soldier, and it's very clearly a body double, and you can almost see the CGI paste bit on it. But listen, look, that is a minor, that's almost like a very geeky, sort of spot. I think any kids watching the movie would have enjoyed it. It's a great intro.
This is what I'm thinking. My kids have never seen an indie movie, so if you introduce that to them, they would instantly want to be indie. Now, there might have been a plot hole that I noticed, or I might have not been paying that much attention, but he punches the guy and pulls him straight out of the car, then gets in the car, and then the baddies get in the car behind him. But nobody seems to notice there's a body next to the car driver's seat that he's just knocked out, unless he drove the car off a bit. I don't think he did. I think he opened the car door. Well, surely they must have said, "Who's this knocked out driver here? Who are you?" But nobody seemed to look at that. But that might have been covered.
My only one was, how did Thomas Kretschmann get in front of him, get to the front, because he's behind of him, and then all of a sudden he's at the front of him in the train as well. That was a kind of a thing. I was like, oh, how did he get right all the way to it? But listen, it's nitpicking. It's a fantastic scene. It's a fantastic opening. It's up there with with some of the great indie scenes. Straight after that, we go to New York. We see Indy, in his apartment, sleeping off, probably drinking in the morning. There's some wonderful Easter eggs in the apartment. Some massive callbacks to Last Crusade, which are very, very noticeable. Little picture. You can definitely see Sean Connery. I think you can see Mutt. I think there's a small picture of Mutt next to Sean Connery, but there's definitely a picture of Sean Connery. Indy's awoken by the Beatles, a magical mystery tour. We get some kind of wonderful kind of character moments to see where he is in life, understanding that him and Marion have separated. She's divorcing him. And there's a wonderful little kind of thing where he covers her face on the fridge with a magnet, which actually he then uncovers right at the very end of the film in a very sneakily way, which is quite funny. But then we get introduced to the kind of the plot ultimately of Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character kind of appearing. We start to introduce.
No. Back up a sec. Because I like this. I liked the opening scene. I liked this, wartime hero, but now he's a kind of a sad old man. And I agree with you. But then they have that scene where he knocks on the neighbour's door. And I think this scene don't work. It's already starting to lose it in terms of pacing now. It's starting to slow down. We know he's old. We know he's grumpy. We know he's an alcoholic. We don't need him knocking on the door to complain.
Yeah, agreed. I thought it was that scene setting bit before we get to the interior of the archives, let's call it, where he pulls out the half of the dial, did drag a little bit. I thought it could have used a little bit of trimming, but it didn't so bother me. I mean, I thought one of the bits was a nice introduction was to Helena, showing that she has a great deal of archaeological knowledge. There was that real kind of setup there. The bit in the bar was really nicely done. I actually think Waller-Bridge and Ford had a really good chemistry together.
I think it was good. I mean, I think they had to give his lecture, gave good exposition and introduced the MacGuffin, did all that really well. Showed that he's kind of lost touch with his students and lost the passion for teaching. All of this was good, but it did need to trim it a little bit. It is. Really, we've had a good bit of action. Yeah, we need some exposition. We need some plot setup. We need some character introductions, but we also need him to start swinging on his whip here. Let's get on with it, shall we? Because
and it's not soon, is it? It's not long, is it, before he's in the archives. He's pushing the shelves over. He is Indy rescuing the day a little bit, but equally, he's also then gets himself into a sticky situation.
No, because if he doesn't do anything, he's absolutely passive at this.
He does push the shelves over, though.
But that's all that he does. He never punches anybody, and he doesn't avenge the deaths of his colleagues. So he's just the two people he's come across executed. What does our action hero do? He calls the police. That's not what an action hero does. No other action hero has ever gone. There's a dead body. There's a bad guy over there.
It didn't bother me. The whole thing of he's in this situation. He's surrounded by people with guns. He's trying to do the right thing and get help. He's an old man. The old man is trying to get help. He knows he can't take them on by himself. He's very aware of his own limitations here. In this.
I think in terms of characterization, he is at the moment Dr. Jones. He's not Indy yet. He hasn't revitalized the Indy.
And I think that's the point, because I think all the way, I think the clue comes later when it's on the boat, when he talks about, and sorry to anybody who hasn't seen it, but we are going to have to discuss a few spoilers, because you learn that Mutt has died in Vietnam, and Indy failed in stopping to stop him from going to the war, and they fell out before he did. And Indy has kind of almost lost his way. Marion has left him. They've clearly, the death of Mutt has clearly torn them apart. So, and I think, it's only until he's really kind of like he realizes he's in the crap a bit that he then makes the escape on the horse. I think even then on the horse it's a desperation. He doesn't try. He swings a punch and swings the placard, but it is Indy getting away, getting to safety. It's not Indy standing up and fighting.
Well, I think it's Dr. Jones escaping, not Indy.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. But that whole scenario on the horse, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah,
well done. Yeah. Well done.
No issues with that. As I say, it was exciting all the way through. There was genuine peril, and I'll stand for that. But it did introduce as well. It introduced the villains. So you've got massive henchmen. Don't know anything about massive henchmen. Boyd, who I think he's called, I want to say Klaber, I think his name was. And you've got Mads. And I thought, okay, fair enough. Big, massive henchman. We don't need to know characterization. He's on job. Big Boyd. Don't know what his motivations are at the moment. Still, to be honest, all the way through didn't work out what his motivation was. He just put on a Nazi outfit at the end. I don't know why. I don't know why.
Well, also when you meet him, he's trying to learn German as well.
Yeah, but I don't understand why he sides with him. I don't understand why why does he want to be a Nazi? And then he introduces Mads as the villain. Now they're playing to character here because Mads is a Bond villain. He's an MCU villain. He's Hannibal Lecter. We know he's a baddie. But did we need the exposition racism? I mean, I'm pretty sure Nazi says baddie, doesn't it? Nobody's on the fence anymore. Oh, is the Nazis going to be a goodie in this one? No.
I think, it's obviously they're trying to play a little bit of ambiguity because, he's backed by the CIA. Why is he backed by the CIA? Well, we find out that he's part of the reason why they were able to go to the moon. He's supposed to be going to meet the president in California, but he's trying to find ways to get out of it. So I think, the whole scene with the waiter and, the racist comment about where are you from originally, and Hitler, you didn't win the war, Hitler lost it. I think is ultimately trying to kind of attempt to show motivation and things like that. I think you're right about the Boyd character. I think the Boyd character is incredibly underwritten. It's an underwritten character. But listen, that's not the first time an indie film has had underwritten characters in it. I always felt, for example, Marcus Brody was in Raiders was incredibly underutilized, and actually, it's only really in Last Crusade, where Brody actually gets to do something that's of substance. It almost feels like for an actor of Dan and Elliott's quality, he's wasted in Raiders.
Yeah, but again, Raiders is a brilliant movie. And I know that the Big Bang Theory, pointed out the 30-year plot hole much better than I will. But it goes to show how good Raiders is. that it took 30 years to work out the plot hole that Indy does know in that movie, because it's so action-packed, it's so well-paced that you swept along with it. Counter to this one, where you're not swept along. Already, the pacing's gone. And
I don't disagree with the pacing's gone. I don't disagree with that. But I actually think once they get to Marrakesh, I think the pacing is great.
Well, hang on.
I think the pacing is fixed.
I'll just cover. Have you seen the Jack Ryan film? Not the one that Clear and Present Danger. No, not Clear and Present Danger. The
Some of All
one,
Fears.
Some of All Fears. Yeah. Right,
Yeah.
they have a Nazi who's the villain in that. He's giving this speech, and the camera moves down to his watch, and on the back of his watch is a swastika. That's how you do a Nazi up-to-date villain, and that's what they should have done with that. They should have had Mads giving a big lecture on physics or giving a thing, explaining why he's a genius, explaining why the CIA need him, but then secretly showing he's still a Nazi, so we know he's a baddie. That racism thing was it's too modern. It's too, let's not offend anybody. Let's woke is the word I'm searching for. We'll show he's woke by being a racist to a black guy.
I'll quite happily give you the clunkiness, what I'll call it, of the setup. I think the setup is clunky, but I think by the time we get to the horse scene, you're swept along with the horse scene. It has some fabulous little quips of dialogue in the subway. Which is harkening back to, one of the things that I always loved the story. A lot of people criticize, they've criticized the filming of Dial of Destiny and the fact that they had to do lots of reshoots and things like that. But people forget Last Crusade had reshoots, lots of reshoots. In fact, the entire castle scene was basically written on set by Tom Stoppard. All that fabulous dialogue about Dad, they use the door, and don't call me Junior. That was all Tom Stoppard, who's one of the world's greatest writers. And I actually really made me smile that when we got into the subway, there were times for Indy to just have little quips, and it was almost like it's slightly coming back. Indy's coming back.
The blood's flowing again a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. He's got the mojo's coming back. And then we meet Salah, and the whole scene with Salah, for me. So I'm knocking on 50. I'm 49 at the minute. I'm knocking on 50, and I'm very aware of age and things like that. And I thought the whole thing then with Salah and Salah taking him to the airport was a lovely thing about age and past glories, and looking back, but equally also looking forward. And and has Indy spent too long looking back, and was he navel gazing too much? And this is almost, Salah saying to him, I think you need this. I think you need to go get out there and go give him hell. And he wants to go with him, and Indy kind of discourages him. But I think that whole scene for me is the real turning point in the film. I feel like this is the part in the film now where we're going to get an Indy movie. Up until this point, I think you're right. I agree with you. Apart from the opening, the 60th point is a Dr. Jones movie, and it's a Dr. Jones, who feels sorry for himself. But I think now, we have the whole kind of thing about going to Marrakesh, and I've got to be honest with you. The whole Marrakesh section, I absolutely loved. I thought this was the bit. I was like I was 14, 15 again. I absolutely loved the Marrakesh sequence.
Okay, I absolutely agree with you. Love Salah. Love to see him back again. Excited that he's in it. And again, this is more than just pandering to the fans to bring him back. Yeah, he had a genuinely good extended cameo, some good dialogue, wonderful things with his grandkids, a little bit of exposition as to why he's in America, but that was all good. Loved it. Here's your hat. And again, this kind of come with you, and Indy's going no. And again, you see the hat and you see the whip in the bag, and you think, yeah, I agree. It's time to put away Dr. Jones and get out Indy. And I absolutely get that, and I see that. So we're introduced to Marrakesh, and we're introduced to, I'm not going to say a full Indy. I'm going to say like a 70% indie. He's not, the blood's
Yeah, yeah.
fully not there yet, but he's trying. I like the Marrakesh scene, and again, we've got classic witty indie and the whip, and he ducks under the table and all. It's in the trailer. We know what we're getting now: an indie escaping the tuk tuk.
And the chase is fabulous. You know, to say that, you know, it's a real hybrid of practical and CG, and you know, and I think, you know, we got to talk about Phoebe Waller-Bridge here, because you know, there's been a lot of kind of you know, people, film reviewers online, really kind of slating Kathleen Kennedy, really kind of having a go at Phoebe Waller-Bridge, you know, already kind of dismissing her and her character, you know, as almost like, you know, she's going to be cuckolding Indy, she's going to be dismissing him, she's going to be like, you know, treating him like, you know, some piece of dirt on her shoe. But actually, the banter, you know, the whole character build of her within this sequence about, you know, understanding her and her life and the mess she's in, you know, and him like kind of, you know, and there's the whole thing about, you know, what happened to the 12-year-old girl I knew, you know, and we must actually come back to that second DA sequence before this, but you know, that whole sequence, I really loved it. I thought, you know, a lot of people say, oh, she's an annoying character. Didn't see that at all. I love the banter, and I love the fact that, you know, she calls him a grave robber earlier, you know, in the movie, and things like that, you know, and this kind of almost, yeah, she's a little bit kind of like, you know, doesn't understand him too much and actually where he's coming from, but actually she suddenly soon discovers that actually she's a lot worse than he ever has been, you know, and you know, and she's actually learning a lot from him, and you know, that whole bit, and we'll get to the tuk tuk kind of repair bit in a minute, you know, I actually thought it was absolutely fabulous, you know, really
Oh
well
yeah,
done
I get you.
action
I
scene.
agree. I know that as soon as you say there's a woman involved,
A
there's
strong female woman, you
yeah,
know, yeah.
the woke crowd wave the flags, and I get that. But I thought she was excellent. I liked first. I like her body of work. I liked
Yeah, I mean,
Fleabag.
I mean, if you, but you can't argue again. Fleabag is such a fabulously written series. You know,
and I,
she's
and I
great in
liked
it.
her, and I liked the dynamic. And again, she's not in any way a love interest. You know,
Yeah,
Indy's got a love interest all the way through all four movies. I know Marion's in it twice, but he's got a love interest in. And how do we establish a strong female character that's not going to be a love interest, but can hold her own against him? And yeah,
yeah.
thought it was excellent. Really liked her. The thing that I didn't like was the short round wannabe character
Yeah.
who is so bland. I had to Google his name before we did this because I don't know what it's. I wrote it down because
Teddy,
yes, it is. This
Teddy.
is how sidekickly bland he is. Not a particularly good actor. Not a great role. Didn't do anything except hit the cliched third act sidekick. I either die or I learn a new skill which will come in incredibly valuable in the third act.
Well, I mean, and you know, they do well in setting up the skill for Act Three, don't they? You know, where he's chatting to the pilots in the bar, you know, and they're telling him what levers to pull. You know, there is that kind of thing there. Let's just rewind a little bit. On the plane to Marrakesh, there's the second de-age sequence.
Yeah.
I've got to be honest with you. I actually thought the de-aging on that second sequence was utterly amazing.
Yeah.
It was really, really good. I mean, it's a very understated. It's very much about acting. It's very much about, you know, Indy chatting with, you know, Toby Jones's character and a young Helena. But the de-aging of that was utterly faultless. Really clever.
What I really liked, and this was just a minor thing, but I thought this is the quality that they've done. You know that in like real life, Phoebe Waller, she's got a mole here. It
Yes.
might be on the other side, I don't know. But they gave that to the 12-year-old character as well, and it was just it didn't need to be there. Do you know what I mean? But the extra things they put in, loved it. And again, really liked the aging scene, and I liked the transition in the window, and she's having she's having her flashback of it. It was all very good. Loved that, and it's a good way to.
And listen, look, as a fellow facial birthmarker, you know, the fact that they kept her birthmark, you know, I thought it was great. So let's get to the bit that you and I discussed earlier on text, the tuk tuk, the end of the tuk tuk. because I really see this to me, right, shows that they've really thought this older indie character out. And, there they are, the tuk tuk's broken, and actually Indy, is the one to use his guile and inventiveness and creativity to get it fixed where Teddy and Helena are very, very dismissive of him and what he's about to do and things like that. And then are actually amazed. And, going to your point about your son, would he want to be this indie? I actually think, yeah, your son will want to be the indie from Raiders and Temple. I absolutely agree. But growing up, as you get older, I want to be that indie. I want to be the clever indie. Because I can't run as fast as I used to be and things like that. And I like being able to astound people and amaze people and get people to raise their eyebrows by little words of wisdom and knowledge and things like that. And that's what it means to get older, does it not?
No, absolutely no. There's a couple of things. Firstly, Indy is both educated and smart, which is not the same as what a lot of other action heroes are.
Mm.
So what you've got is you've got a MacGyver moment here, haven't you? You've got something's broken and I'm going to MacGyver it. I've got no issues with that. And the little smirk that he gives at the end is classic Indy. It's very Harrison Ford. It is what it is. And you've got the exposition setting up the next. So, we've had action sequence, exposition, action sequence. This is the thing. Yeah. And you need a moment to bring the audience back, to calm them down, to give everybody a breath of. I've got no issues with that. What I had an issue with is let's do this on the top of a hill in broad daylight on a street. This is where Mangold directed it wrong. All movies do this. If you get wounded, apparently now you've got to go to a veterinarian. This is the cliche at the moment, but you have to have a moment of regrouping mentally, physically, but also for the characters as well. But in Raiders, when they do that, they said, Indiana Jones says these Arabs don't care if we kill each other, and they acknowledge. If we've got to do it in broad daylight, we have to acknowledge that characters around us are living their life. Now, other movies like Fast and the Furious lean into the ridiculous. That's it. But Indy doesn't lean into the ridiculous. They could have shot that scene in a darkened garage, in an alleyway. They could have done it. They could have had all the same dialogue. They could have had all of the same characterization. They didn't need to frame it in broad daylight, top of an hill, in front of everybody, after a major chase through a city with a gunfight. No, you need to say.
Look, I'll give you it. I'll give you it, but it's a very nitpicky sort of thing. Okay, yes, they could have done what they did in Raiders, which is go drive into a market, and go get hidden and things like that. I'm with you. I get you. I totally know where you're coming from, but it didn't bother me that much. I've got to be honest with you. I enjoyed that chase sequence so much. And I love the whole kind of indie parting knowledge and being the guy who facilitates, and gets them out of some trouble again, and gets them helping, moving them onto the journey. And then also, you've got the parting thing about how worldly wise and well connected Indy is, because while Helena's kind of spouting on about various things, Indy's like, well, I've got a mate in Spain, and and it's like, this is where you get the true Indy's, lived an amazing, fantastic life, and and people love him, and he's got connections all over the world, and which sees us then transported to to go and meet Antonio Banderas.
We'll just one more thing on this scene, and then we'll move on. He asks her to allow him to come along. Come on, you're Indy. You're alpha male. This is my adventure. When the major character asks the minor character if it's okay, he comes along. No, he leads the way. He's the protagonist. Is Indy. So we are going.
I think it was more of an invitation as a team. I think it's more of a let's do this together. I think this is the whole thing about giving ground, isn't it? It's like the old Indy would never have given ground, But this is an age thing. Again, it's another thing. It's about recognizing that sometimes you have to give ground to encourage the person to come the other way. And I think he recognizes in Helena, the intelligence. He's like, he's berated her earlier about how her father would be disappointed, and I think there's a little bit of giving ground here that's going on. I actually think it's a very, very well scripted moment.
Okay, all right.
So, Antonio Banderas, I mean, great actor, massively underutilized in this. It is a shame. The whole sequence under the sea. I mean, in the cinema that I was in, I saw it in the Everyman. So, it was pretty pitch black. My only criticism of the underwater scene was I couldn't really see what was going on. Now, this could be because, 49 and wearing varifocals, and, it all just seemed a little bit too dark for me. I got what was going on, with them recovering the box from the ship and things like that, and getting to the surface. But I did overall think that the cinematography in this bit did let it down a little bit. I did, with the eels and things like that.
No, it didn't bother me that.
Okay.
And the eels were, cleverly a nice reference to the snakes. I like that. I liked
a brilliant
all
reference to the snakes, and it did, it caused a good ripple of chuckle throughout the cinema that I was in when Teddy said they like snakes under the water. I thought that was a lovely little moment.
The only, and again, I'm nitpicking more than anything, but you have an underwater sequence in any action movie, they're going to run out of air, and it didn't over tip its hat. It was just, I know that this is going to happen. Do you know what I mean? Name an action movie where they have to go scuba diving and there's and there's no peril. They always problem with the tank, problem with the air supply. With he gives a 3-minute time frame for no other reason than to add a 3-minute timer. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think it's probably to do with how much air they've got or something like that.
But as I say, you knew as soon as they said let's go underwater, you knew there's going to be a moment when they're about to run out of air, didn't you? But I can't really criticize it because it's an action movie and you've got to...
So, we get another device found. Again, Voller has caught up with them with his henchmen. We get a lovely kind of bit with Phoebe Waller-Bridge, smart talking them out of the situation, and I think this is her moment, isn't it? It's very much her moment, and it's Indy's chance to admonish her for the way she's behaving. But actually, I think by the end of that scene, he's proud of her. He kind of gets what she's trying to do. And then at the end of the scene, like the end of the tuk-tuk scene, you get another Indy life, archaeological lesson moment, which is,
you do,
it's another moment for Indy to shine and show, how it's his experience and his knowledge and his education again. I get what you're saying about you haven't really had much Indy moments by now. He's driven the tuk-tuk. He's thrown a couple of punches that haven't really landed that well. He's been, he panicked a little bit down in underwater because of the eels. You haven't really had, but I kind of feel like now we get into the archaeological bit, and we're starting to head towards the cave, where I actually then do believe we start to get some proper good Indy moments.
Well, there's a couple of things. One, and again, this is where I'll give you two choices and you're wrong on both. So they have to escape. If Phoebe Waller does it, which she did do, Indy does note, so you criticise Indy for not doing out. If Indy would have got them out of that situation, you'd have criticised Phoebe Waller for doing out. So he didn't do out, didn't Indy? He sat there while she talked her way out of it. And again, there is a little bit of a let's overplay the cigarette, shall we? Yes. Oh, that's going to be useful. Let's, again, tip in the hat a little bit too much. But should it have been Indy that got them out of that? I don't know. But I'll tell you what I really liked, and I absolutely nearly applauded this bit of writing, when she's celebrating their escape and, we've got away with it. And he says, my friend just died. Just
Yes.
brilliant.
Yes. Now, do you know what?
Absolutely
I'm with you on that. I thought that bit was pitched bloody brilliantly. You know, it was a real kind of, she's like drunk on her own kind of like joyfulness and superiority of talking them out of this situation. And he's lost a dear friend, and it kind of sells the dear friend on the build up to it. I think you're right. I thought that was a brilliantly scripted moment. It really, really was. And it's almost like a first for indie for them to really kind of acknowledge loss like that. A character dying like that. I mean, I don't really think we've had any hero characters dying like that, probably, or Indy's friends dying like that in any of the movies. I'm a bit
he starts. Temple of Doom is his friend who's the waiter. Hey, that's not a waiter. Good service.
Yeah,
But
good point. Yes, yeah.
What you have is same as all action movies. You have that initial loss, then that look of steely-eyed "I will avenge," and then nothing, no mention of it in any scene afterwards. Whereas this was a genuine moment where the action sequence is over. We should be celebrating. No, my friend died,
and he properly tells her off. Really tells her off. Yeah. But then we get to the reveal of another part of the disc, which I thought, again was another great indie moment. You've then got, them heading to Sicily, where you then get to the point what you were made, where you could probably see it coming, where the third sidekick or the second sidekick gets captured, because in order for the plot to happen. They know where they're going. They've solved the riddle of where they need to go. But how do you then get the villains there? Well, get them to capture the kid so that and when we get to the cave sequence, there's some lovely little character moments before we get to that cave sequence. But you and I were chatting earlier about the non-use of the whip and the things like that. And I actually thought that the climb up the wall was a really lovely indie moment. He should have been using his whip. He should have been swinging and things like that. But here's this 80-odd-year-old man struggling to climb this wall. She's taking the piss a little bit, but he's then reminded. He's like, I've been shot 8 times. I've been like stabbed by voodoo. You can't blame me for my joints not working.
No, I agree with that absolutely. But again, he's red-blooded indie now. He's not Dr. Jones anymore.
Yeah,
and maybe they did it in the Crystal Skull where he swings and he misses and he lands on the car, referencing he's not got the youth of it anymore.
Yeah.
We do need a bit of whip swing, and we absolutely needed booby traps. They just went to the tomb. They climbed up a wall. What is the thing you think of in Indy?
And you're right. And listen, look, I think we did get that really with the Archimedes kind of the water and the methane and
no,
she's
that wasn't a booby trap. That wasn't a booby trap.
But it was a puzzle. It was a puzzle. But
where's the big boulder that's coming down? Where's the moving the gold and weighting it?
Also, as well, to a certain degree, we had that in 1 and 3, but we didn't ever have that in. A little bit in 2 with the prism with the spikes sort of thing. That was always my big gripe with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, that when they got into the tombs towards the end, wasn't really any danger in the spears and things like that. So I agree with that, but I did really like the scene where she's panicking in the tomb, and again, Indy's very calm. He solves it. He gets them to where they need to be, and then when the villains kind of catch up with them, which we knew was going to happen, I actually think then we get the Indy moment. The gunfight is the Indy moment. He basically goes to sacrifice himself to save them two. He grabs the gun. We have a proper good Indy moment. Almost reminiscent of the gun shootout in Raiders. Where he gets himself into a bit of a pickle, and that was the bit where I was like, yes, really enjoyed that little flash of gunfight.
Well, I agree, but you said it yourself. That was a flash. We don't need a flash. We need fire. We need more of these. And the other thing as well, they introduced giant henchmen. Pat Roach is equivalent.
Yeah.
And as soon as he came on screen at the very first act, I thought, I wonder how Indy's going to beat him up, because there's no chance of Indy. What they're going to do is a thing where he'll punch him a few times, and then he'll have to use his wit and ingenuity to beat this guy, because he's never going to physically beat him. Even Indy in his prime wouldn't have beat this giant mountain of a man. So he's going to have to outwit him here. Never even sees him again, does he? Never meets him. It's the kid. And the kid doesn't have the short round moment. The kid doesn't have this, I'm inspired to fight and become Indy, which is what short round does. I've got to go rescue Indy, and he becomes a ninja and kicks those guys and he starts to attack Pat Roach Sherpa with the whip and all that. That kid didn't do that. That kid wasn't inspired by Indy, which is what I wanted my 6-year-old to be. I wanted him to go, wow, I want to do.
All right. Well, I mean, I'll give you that. I mean, because it was almost by accident that, the kid kind of, resourcefulness, maybe a little bit. But, yeah, the cracking of the bridge and, him putting the key in his mouth, escapes that. But let's fast forward then to the plane sequence, because I actually thought the whole, because in the trailers it kind of makes you think it's Indy on the bike racing to get the plane, doesn't it? And it's funny because I read a review actually where it said, oh, somebody on a bike racing to hide the badness of the CGI de-aged Indy. And it was like, well, you're clearly not seeing the film because it's not Indy. And I actually thought that whole bit of her getting on the plane was brilliant. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I do. And I know that we're going to cover a well-worn action movie cliche here, but we've just shot the goodie. Why don't we just kill the goodie? Now, I know, I can't criticize it really, because to criticize this is to criticize every action movie where we've got, let's just shoot the bad guy.
Take him with us. Yeah.
I mean, Austin Powers nailed it better than I ever will. But we'll get him on the plane. But again, he's an 8-year-old bloke and he's been shot. I think, to be honest, he's in trouble here. He's in a lot more trouble than he should be. And what he does on the plane is absolutely nothing. He doesn't save the day.
No. But he does, because, there's a little bit of, where he's kind of saying to Voller about the date and things like that. Yeah, Phoebe Waller-Bridge uses uses a bomb door to get away. But the parachute moment, come on.
We'll come on to that.
I was nearly jumping out of my seat at that bit. I was like, go on, Indy. It was a proper Indy moment.
We'll come on to that in a minute, because you're jumping a little bit ahead. Because what he works out, understand, and this is Dr. Jones, well, he's Indy and Dr. Jones, the merging of the two, where he's using his intellect to work out that Archimedes is wrong. Well, Archimedes didn't know about the continent, and Voller is wrong. He's outsmarted the Nazi genius, and it means nothing. He don't even though he panics the villain. What difference does it make? Now, in the same thing happens in Raiders, where he doesn't actually defeat the baddie, but in Raiders he's smart enough to know to close his eyes and say, what does he? He explains how to defeat he explains the problem with the plan, but it's of no benefit to him or no benefit to the characters or no benefit. It's just exposition for the audience. But actually, had he have said those very lines when they went through the time portal and they look around and say, why have we come to the wrong place? He could have explained it then. It would have made no difference to the plot. That was just simply Indy's talking, because the audience needs to know what's happening, but it could have been done after they've gone through, and it would have made no difference.
I mean, it didn't bother me. I was like, I knew what was coming. I knew that, the rescue was coming. And I thought the whole sequence back in, 4 BC or whenever it was, 400 BC, was absolutely fantastic. I really, great sequence. The whole, Indy's, chat with Archimedes, the whole thing about, his life, what does he have to go back for? I thought it was really well done, and her pleading with him, and making him see that if he stayed there because he's been shot, he's going to die. If anything, he had to get shot. Otherwise, he would have stayed, you know, and then the jump cut, you know, we'll come on to the end sequence shortly, but that whole bit and the Indy parachute out of the plane, you know, I guess my only criticism of some of those scenes, I wanted the Indy theme more.
Maybe so, maybe so. I knew the parachuting bit because it's in the trailer.
Yeah.
I wondered, and I think they maybe missed a trick on this because he never loses his hat, and I wondered how were they going to have him parachuting with his hat on? Do you know what I mean? And I was waiting for some sort of witty joke or some reference to
Yeah.
the hat coming off, but they missed that, and I thought missed a trick on that one. You could have,
yeah. I mean, she just grabs it and away they go.
Yeah,
So
and it means nothing that she just grabbed it. Do you know what I mean? But it's in
let's get to that end scene, and then let's have a quick discussion before we wrap up. So I got to be honest with you. You know, we get back to the apartment, and in walks Marion. Right? I've got to be honest with you. I had a lump in my throat. I honestly, that whole end scene where they recreated the boat kiss from Raiders, flipping made me well up, fella. I was
right,
honestly, I
right,
really, really, really got me in the because ultimately what she was saying, you know, was that she hurt so much from Mutt's death, you know, and it's clearly not talked about it. You know, it was clearly the divide, you know, and he's saying he hurt, you know, and you know, and then the whole thing of where doesn't it hurt, you know, and the call back to Raiders boat scene. I just and then the character dynamics of Helena and Salah coming back, and you know, you've got the little bit of a charactery finish, you know. I just thought the whole ending was just superbly well done.
Well, yes and no, because it is heartwarming. It's bittersweet. I agree with the this bit doesn't hurt and this bit doesn't hurt. And in Raiders, that's my favourite joke when she hits him with the mirror. It's my favourite bit. But Indy is the character doesn't earn her back. He don't want to. He's knocked out to be brought back. He's not sacrificing himself for the greater good. He's just willing to die. He's not bothered. He wakes up. He complains that he's woke up, and then he doesn't earn Marion's love anymore. He hasn't done anything. There's no character arc. She walks in because Phoebe Waller calls her.
Yeah, but she comes back because she hears he's been on this adventure, and she hopes that, you know, this adventure has brought back the Indy that she loves, and that's what that whole scene is about. You know, she asks if he's back.
But Indy doesn't earn it. Indy doesn't learn.
I think he's earned it throughout the film. I think him coming back, recognizing that there's this almost blended family that he's now got of Marion, Helena, you know, Salah coming round. I think in that moment, you know, and I think that's kind of almost like why there's the little sort of removal of the magnet off the fridge, you know, off her picture. I think there's a whole thing about him recognizing, you know, about what he actually has in life. I think that's
but that's the thing. He doesn't realize that because he doesn't fight for it. He doesn't want to go back. The previous scene ends with him being knocked out and dragged to a plane. The first thing he says is, "I wish you hadn't have done that." You know, and then you find out that it's Phoebe that's called Marion, which should have been. He does realize he's got something to live for. He does realize.
I think so. I think, you know, obviously there's a wrapping up thing, and you know, and they're probably trying to do it in a way that's less time consuming than, you know, than him then waking up and then going to see Marion and things like that. Listen, I got to be honest with you, it worked for me. You know, you know, when that end title, when he grabbed the hat off the washing line, you know, and the title came up, I've got to be honest with you, you know, and let's wrap this up, and let's wrap it up by talking about where this film sits, you know, in the 5 Indiana Jones films. Because I've got to be honest with you, I'm saying it's in my top 3.
No.
I say Raiders is always number 1 for me. Raiders is absolutely. Last Crusade is always number 2. I absolutely adore Last Crusade. Temple of Doom, I'm kind of like, you know, Temple of Doom for me has got more holes and problems with it than Dial of Destiny has. You know, the biggest one being the 10,000 gallons of water. How the hell does that get past that massive like ravine where where the cable car like falls? It's like, hang on, there wasn't that much water in that. There's lots of holes in that. But for me, I actually thought I'm sitting it above Temple of Doom. I'm slitting it as number 3 in between Crusade and Temple of Doom, with Kingdom of Crystal Skull still last.
Well, for me, Last Crusade is the absolute best. It's the best one because it's the third part of a trilogy where you know the character, the jokes only work because it's a sequel. And as a standalone movie, if you've never seen Indy, it won't work as well. Then you've got Raiders. I actually really enjoy Temple of Doom. In fact, I would probably say I've watched Temple of Doom more, but that might be because
but that's
of
the one you saw at the cinema with your dad,
yeah,
isn't it? Where the first one I ever saw was Raiders. I mean, I'm 49, so that's the first one ever. And actually, my son's 24. He was actually my son, and I went to see it last night. My son's actually called Harrison. I wonder why that is. We went to see it last night, and he really enjoyed it. He thought it was fantastic. And we actually had set, and he said he thought it was better than Doom and Crystal Skull.
Well, Crystal Skull, all the way through Crystal Skull, I was saying to myself, I hope it's not really aliens. I hope the aliens is a red herring. I hope it's not aliens. And then it was aliens. But and then we can all criticize Shia LaBeouf as we should, and we should all criticize the CGI monkeys as we should. But at least Crystal Skull was fun. At least all the way through, you're enjoying it. And the jokes landed a lot better in Crystal Skull, particularly the age jokes. But he pulls out a bazooka. He proper fights. He didn't fight in this one. He didn't beat up a baddie.
Listen, look, I think, and I think that when people talk about the fridge moment in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I don't think that's a fair slate on that movie at all, because, you've got essentially in Last Crusade a Messerschmitt flying through a tunnel, which is daft, and you've got the whole the car scene in Temple of Doom, on the railway car sort of thing, which is totally ridiculous as well. And the fridge scene is no more ridiculous than the Messerschmitt scene, right? My problem with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is that third act, is the whole jungle sequence. I actually think you're right with the rocket launch. I think the rocket launch is a very funny moment in a very, very poor finale. I would say that, overall, right, when you compare apples with apples, I actually think Dial of Destiny is far better than Kingdom of Crystal Skull. I think it knocks it out of the park. And I think it's a film that has more emotions within it.
Oh yeah, it's a much better character-driven movie. And if you think of the story as a washing line, the action sequences are the things you hang on the washing line.
Yes,
Dial of Destiny is a much better, stronger washing line. But the bits that you want, the pauses in the narrative, the action sequences, the fun, the yell at the screen and cheer, and I want to be like that. Still pick Crystal Skull.
I think we're getting to the point where your problem with it is you wanted more of Indy of old within it, where actually what I loved about it was the fact it wasn't Indy of old. Yeah. But I still have Raiders and Last Crusade. Raiders and Last Crusade for me, largely because I love the scripts. The scripts are absolutely, they come from an age of cinema within the 80s. That 10 years within the 80s where script writing was really an art, and it almost feels that there's a flabbiness to today's script writing. The art of the well-placed gag and things like that is a little bit lost. But overall, so before we wrap up, mark it out of 10. What is, everybody like watching now, they've made it to the end of this, God help them, I'm saying it's a 7.5 out of 10.
I'm gonna go 6. Partly because it wasn't a bad film. It just wasn't an indie film. Do you know what I mean? It might have been a Dr. Jones movie, but it really wasn't an indie film.
Okay, and with that, we'll agree to disagree. Rob, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Film Fellas, and probably no doubt you and I will speak again when Mission Impossible comes out in a few weeks.
Looking forward to number 7 very much.